All right, I've got the mold set upside down in a big Rubbermaid container. There's a little bit of hemp fiber underneath, a nice soft towel, and a piece of paper towel over the terry cloth towel to keep plaster from smearing all over the towel. It's an extra towel, but if I can keep them clean, I go for it. All right, let's start opening, or I should say just pulling away the clay from the bottom. Shall we? Yes, let's see what the heck happens. Just one strip, and we return the clay to the container under the heat lamp, under the light source. This is the excess clay that went around the outer edge. Just to kind of build it out just a wee bit. So I'm going to remove this first because this was the last stuff to be put in place. Let's remove it first. Knock the plaster off the clay. We don't need extra plaster in with the clay. All right. Now this is coming away real nice, as I had hoped. Whenever things go right, I get so pleased and so excited about it. Oh, lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful, baby. All right, I think this clay bottom is just going to lift right off of here. I'm already getting some motion. But I don't want to lift the whole thing at one time. I'm going to take it off in parts. You can see this was part of where the molar and the back of the skull was located. We have another one here. Like with the cat, the clay was built in 2 layers. You can see the molars here, the rear of the skull here. Now I'm going to carefully work this up. I don't want to pull the mold out of the plaster. So there's lots of separator here on this. Oh, this is just sweet. This is just sweet. Look at that. Now that came right out of there. You couldn't ask for it to come out any better than that. A little bit of clay right here. Part of the eye socket. Just take that right out. Beautiful. And the nicest thing about it is we have no silicone in any of the pockets of the bone. Now I'm not sure. It looks like I missed getting silicone down here where I wanted. Yeah, okay. Well, that's not a problem. That's just that'll be captured with the lower portion of the mold is all. There's a lot of stuff on here. And the way this will come out entirely, there will be a cut made here where the bones meet. And I think I have a nice mold here. Well, I'm going to let this cure a little further. It's cured. It's cured. And like I say, this is a nice waist mold. I have some nice lines here. Need to clean some clay out from here. Like so. Alright, that looks good. That looks good right there. I'd like to go around with the flashlight and the modeling tool and pick out whatever I can. Okay, I'm going to apply Vaseline to this entire thing. I'm going to use the thin Vaseline. Let me get that out right now. That in my storage cabinet. Get this out here. Alrighty. I'm going to coat this entire lower surface, the entire thing, with the thin Vaseline mixture. I want to keep the Vaseline, I want to keep the additional silicone for the bottom from sticking to the silicone that's been put in place already. So everything on the lower side here will be coated with the Vaseline mixture. All the bone, all the silicone, as well as the plaster around the edge. Okay, make sure we get this thoroughly, especially around the edge where the plaster meets the silicone mold, because we have it's a little loose. There's a little bit of play. I noticed that happened as I was lifting the clay. I lifted the front end first. And that's why I decided to go ahead and open it from the rear forward. Now we have our locking keys. Really came out nice. I was hesitant about how this particular type of silicone putty, for want of a better term, would fill these, because it's unlike the liquid, it doesn't flow. And I did not know if it would go into those little holes I created with the bottom of the Sharpie, which was this end of the Sharpie here. Just pushed down into it was dipped into alcohol and pushed down into the clay. But here we're going to go around all of this. Now this on the bottom of the Klipspringer skull, this was very weak here. It was missing bone, and I did not want to fill that in with clay, because this is not my skull, and I didn't want to send back a skull that had clay shoved into it. And because this stuff is so thick, the silicone, I'll be handling around these openings in the skull in a different manner than I had with the cat. For instance, these holes here, I'm not going to worry about filling them, for the simple reason that I'm not going to really push the silicone into it. So it's not really going to be affected to the point where silicone is like going to flow in. Same thing with the back here. I'll probably cover the back end of the skull, the rear end of the skull, very, very last of all. And it'll be a simple matter of washing the Vaseline off with some Dawn detergent to get it off the bone. The clay pulled away because I did coat it with MR15. And I'm just going to keep going over this and going over this until I'm ready to apply the lower half silicone. Now I'm going to put the full thickness Vaseline on with my fingertip, like so. I'm going to fill any gaps in the plaster, such as here in front. I want to fill that in. I don't want the silicone pushing down in there and getting underneath between the plaster and silicone. I don't want it to stick together at all. And I sure as heck don't want the plaster to stick to itself. So I'll be going around the edge of the plaster with the thickened Vaseline, as well as along the edge of the plaster here, in case there's any overlap. Okay? And you just make sure you fully prep all mold surfaces for any contingency. All right? And that's how you keep plaster from sticking to itself, and of course from silicone. Keep silicone from sticking to itself. You just go over it real well until you're completely coated. And I will continue to do this. When I come back, I'll be pouring up, or be applying silicone to the bottom here. Okay, here we go. 100% silicone, clear, into the water. I love that sound as it's going along, singing a song. I'm not going to use the whole tube this time. The bottom is not, there's not quite as much of the bottom as there was of the top. I guess we're about down to here. I know that's not enough for the mandibles either, but there we go. Okay. Just slosh the water over it. Make sure it's covered really well. That is cold water. And it's about 60 degrees in the shop here right now. About 83 outdoors. Now, I keep my alcohol and Dawn in a little covered jar labeled alcohol and Dawn. Pour it into a plastic container as needed. This way I don't have to keep mixing it up fresh every time. So now this is ready to put my hands into as needed. Okay, and here we have the jaw set, or the underside of the skull, I should say. All right. Now, I'll start by mixing up, or I should say, by manipulating the silicone. I'll show what's involved in that. I say let this sit for just a few minutes. Dry the water off my hands. That's really cold water. Really, really cold water. Now I'll dip my hands in this solution here. Rub them together real well. And start by scooping up the silicone. You got to watch because it starts to stick to, if it touches the plastic down there of the container, of the bin it's in, it will stick to that. So I try and get that off and onto the main piece of silicone here, like so. Okay, this needs to sit in the water just a little longer. A piece of paper towel, get this off my hands. Silicone sticking to my hands. Needs to sit in the water just a little longer. Okay. I think I need to coat my hands better is what the problem was. So we'll do that. There's a little hair in here. I don't want to get that all over my hands. Get that out of there. Okay, now, in we go again. Another soap and alcohol session. Make sure it's on my hands really well. Now we go in, pick this up, and yeah, now she's starting to manipulate. Fold it over on itself. You want to work out the air. Squeeze it down. Reapply the alcohol and soap to your hands as needed. And in this case, possibly I didn't get the water cold enough. I don't know. It's being a little sticky with me here. Okay. So here we are here. Yeah, I think my hands are a little warm. So I'll just keep putting the soap on my hands. the soap and alcohol, I should say. And now slide this back into the water. Turn it into the horrible looking floating silicone jellyfish. I'll wipe my hands down with a cloth rag here. Just want to get the sticky silicone off because that's not going to help to have it on there. Much better. Okay, I'm going to start applying it to the underside of the skull here. Tear off pieces. Start applying. Always got to remember to put your hands in the alcohol and detergent, or the alcohol and dishwashing soap. Every time you grab this stuff, you got to do it. One hand, then the other. One hand and then the other. Tear it off like so. Pile it up on one side. Pile it up on the other side. Just want to pat it down real well. Make sure you're not trapping any air bubbles. Now here's where we go right down the center. Like so. I say I'm not looking to get a whole ton of detail. I just want a decent casting of the skull. I could have even stopped with just the top of the skull at this point. Okay. I would tear off a little ball and go onto this side here, because all I really needed this for was basically the skull plate portion. But because it is a Klipspringer skull, and because you don't find these very frequently, and when you do, they're usually quite pricey. So I'm going over it like so. Now I'm rolling this next one into kind of like a tube, and I'm going to wrap this around the rear section of the skull before I put the rest of the tube in the water. I am going to use the entire tube of silicone for this. Didn't think I needed to, but obviously I do. So let's put the rest of this into the water. You'll know that sound again. Oh, hey, she's popping. That means there is an air bubble trapped in that little piece of silicone. Now this will be enough to finish this off. Now in the meantime, as this is sitting in the water, I'm going to continue to slosh the water over the silicone in here. Make sure it's completely covered with water. Dry my hands. Now put my hands into the alcohol solution, alcohol and dishwashing soap detergent solution. And I want to press down, and I want to make good contact of all of these silicone parts, all the sections. I want this all to come together really, really beautifully. I don't want any seams. The top part's a little sloppy. There's a few seams. Really don't like that, but you know, what are you going to do? But you want to make sure there's no air. More than anything else, you want to make sure there isn't any air entrapment. Okay, now this section with the brain cavity is the last section I'm going to cover. I'll put my hands into the alcohol and Dawn detergent, scoop them under and around this silicone and start balling it together between my hands. Fold it over on itself a few times, just like I did before, just like I showed before. Fold it over, pressing out the air as you go, like so and like so. Now, slap it back and forth like you're making a Krabby Patty. I only say Krabby Patty because, let's face it, SpongeBob is always chasing jellyfish. Weird little bugger that he is. Just like so. Okay, that's good. That's good. A little more. Work it just a wee bit more. Work any air out. Okay. A little piece of plaster in there. Dirty, rotten piece of plaster. Get that out of there. Okay. There we go. All right. Drop that back into the water. Let it sit. Wipe my hands dry real quick. Okay. I'll be dipping my hands back into the alcohol and Dawn detergent solution, and I'll be covering this back portion of the skull right here. First, I'm going to take a paper towel and absorb some of the moisture that's on here. Just sop it up just a bit. Just light patting. That's all I'm doing. Just a light patting down. All right. Now we're going to get this. All right. Here we go. Right hand, left hand, rub the hands together, pick up, and tear off a piece, put the other hunk back in the water, roll it into a meatball shape, and now I'm going to go and fill down into a little detail of the skull here. I want to push that down there. Just like you see right in here, there's a vertical. I just want to get some of the silicone in there. Okay, just a little bit. Not a lot. I don't want this locking up. And I sure as heck don't want to trap any air. So be careful. Now as I'm coming around here, I'm going to seal the hole. And gently tap this so that it begins to go in just a little bit. So I want some of that detail. Now the rest gets put around the edge here to capture the locking points. That's the whole point of having them on there, is to capture them so that the mold parts locked together. Now I'm going to fill in around the middle here, over the teeth again. Right here along the bottom, just behind the molars. Press this down really well. Join this up, join this all together. Join this all together now. All together now. First half is starting to gel up already. Reach in, pull out a little more. Roll it into a ball, flatten it out between my hands, lay it over the teeth. See how she's starting to slide? I don't want it to slide, it means it's not sticking. I definitely want this to be sticking, and work the air bubbles out as I go. Smooth it and join it. Join one part to the other. And then make sure the edges are right. Make sure they're matching up with their counterpart. Like so. And a little bit over here. Just to strengthen it and back it up a bit. Okay. Alright, and I'm going to put the last bit of silicone over the rear portion of the skull. Get these other parts that stuck to the bottom here. Get them all together. Kind of knead them together, like so. and down they go. Like so. All right. All right. Right there. Perfect. I think it's perfect. Kind of hard to see, it's so darn clear. But right now I want to go over and I want to sop up as much moisture as possible. I also want to keep this line of the mold here where it's supposed to be, in line with the first half. All the way around. All the way around. I want to be sure that the lower part here is making contact with those locking points. Make sure that it's created sockets, locking socket points around those high points. I try and get it as even as possible. Dip my hands in the solution and smooth it. All fingers, all fingers. All hands on deck, all fingers in a solution. And work out any air bubbles you might find under the layers. So one of the things Travis emphasized was making sure to unlock the air bubbles that are trapped under there. There we go. All right, I think we have a nice lower section of mold here. I really, really do. Honest to God, I think we have a nice section of mold here. Whoops. All right, it was a little too dry. Right now there's so much soap and alcohol on my fingers. It's going to be hard pressed for me to stick to it. With the paper towel, no problemo sticking, baby. And now we can shape. Try and get an even shape. As even as possible, because I'm not really going for anything spectacular here. I just want the bottom section to line up with the top section, the upper portion. And I think we got it. Now, I'm going to go wash my hands and get this stuff off my hands so it doesn't dry out my skin any more than it already has. And I'm going to let this set. And it'll set for several hours until it cures. I may come back to it later and just check on it. Make sure it hasn't sagged anymore. Doesn't seem to be any undue amount of liquid on top of the silicone. So we seem to be in good shape there. All right, that looks good. That looks real good. And there we have it. There we have it.